So we are focused on service. We are focused on philoxenia. This hospitality that you make a stranger to feel loved by people that they haven't ever met.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Melbourne is renowned for its large Greek community, evident in how Greek and the Mediterranean has influenced its culinary landscape over many decades. But what does a modern interpretation of both look like in today's industry? Ioannis Kasidokostas is the owner of Aegli and Sowl in Melbourne. Ioannis, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to get you on the show. You not only have two venues, you've also got a third on the way. How are things at the moment?
We haven't actually announced anything. Although we are very much looking forward to. It's great to see Greek food has a great exposure in Melbourne the last 2-3 years. Massive, actually. And it was a great opportunity for us to do as such a venue like Aegli.
Well, it's pretty amazing. You've been a big part of that in recent years. Tell us about Aegli and Sowl and the difference between the two venues.
Sowl it was the first venue that we got the opportunity to open in Melbourne and in Australia, because I'm just here for 15 years. So it was a great opportunity to see and study, because I did work with a lot of good restaurateurs and operators before, but it's different when you run it yourself. You are responsible for everything. It has a different feeling. Sowl, it still is a great restaurant. It's also great to see our guests responding in a positive way. They see what we do there, and when we achieve such a restaurant in the suburbs, we were ready to expand, not necessarily corporate style expansion, but also a new project, Aegli, Greek cuisine in Australia, through my experience as a cook, as a chef. Because I've seen Greek food differently in Greece, in Athens. So my interpretation is a bit different to what we've seen here. Not better, different. Not better, different. Because I eat anywhere. You will see me eating in small places, just chops and salad, not always salad, potatoes. So I love what people do in Australia regarding food culture, good food, and generosity. Aegli is a different. We see things from a different angle. How Greek food can be elegant. Why Greek food is not in the list of the elegant night out wine and dine. So we want this. We want this Greek cuisine on the list.
Well, I want to explore what you're doing there more in detail, and also how you're expanding your little empire there as well in Melbourne. But you mentioned Athens. Take us back to when you were young. What was it like growing up in Athens, and did food play a big role in your family?
Food is a big culture and value, a principle on the Greek table in the family. It's not something that we we disregard. A well-cooked meal is a reference, always. It can be potatoes and eggplant, that's it. Pan-fried, shallow-fried, but a little bit of sliced garlic and some tomato salad, or winter, the lovely cabbage. So there is always good, well cooked food at the table. So it's a reference. So it's every Greek family has a point of meeting, gathering. It's a table. That's Greek culture anyway. It's not particular. Now our family involved in fishing and sales of fish, fishing boats and shops in the central fish market of Athens. There are still shops with our name there. Our cousins running the business, which is great. Like, feel very, very. It's emotional when I go to Athens. I always go there. Yes. So, yeah, food. It was part of our family. I still remember. Definitely, I'm lucky that I still remember things since I was a kid. A rabbit stew that I started questioning my mom. How did you do that? I ate half a pot. I was 4 years old. But then I found out that there was a school which is actually sister school of Lyon in France, in Athens. So we were studying French cuisine, because French cuisine is a flagship of information, because the French people wrote the recipe. There is data. And this is how you make a cuisine great and well known. Yes, people know Greek cuisine as well, but how about we create data for Greek cuisine? There are a lot of cookbooks out there. People that they do that. Well, I have a couple of in my drawer, but I've never got the chance to start writing. No time. I always run out of time. But all these people that they wrote the recipes, we start from French-trained old school chef in Greece, Telemedes, and all these things that we sometimes laughing at, but all this time spent, all this effort spent to write a cookbook, it's marvelous. People spend a lifetime to learn how to read a book, and we want to do that, but we cannot spend the effort, we cannot spend the time, regardless if we have or not time. So French cuisine was a start, then fancy restaurants in Athens. It was a burning desire. How can you be the best chef in Athens? For Athenians, very, very arrogant. Athens is the only place. We don't care for the rest of the Greek, like jokes, but it was about how can we cook in the best restaurant in Athens? Can we be the best chefs in Athens and then in Greece in extent? So arrogant chefs, because this is the ego. We can't lie. There is ego-driven people. We are ego-driven people. We want to please people that without ever met them before, we want them impressed. That's a drive.
Before we get to your career in Athens, tell us about the family. Were you influenced by your grandmother or mother? Is there any of their dishes that you look back on fondly you can tell us about?
There is, but because it was house cooking and was for us young children or even grown-up children in the family, high school times, and food was the meal. This is how we fill our bellies and we survive. The special stuff, it was the special gatherings, celebrations, then fancy little meatballs with a lot of garlic and mint, I still remember this. and lovely goat wrapped in vine leaves and artistic stuff, like grandmothers that were cooking 2, 3, 4 days for 2 hours meal. So this is where the glory was. Yes, at an everyday table, there is an everyday meal that can be impressive, always. Little meatballs baked, slow baked with tomato and then crushed feta on top. All this rustic stuff that we think today to bring into the modern world. So there is a lot of influence. Influence also a little taverna in the middle of nowhere and sitting down eating like beef, slow cooked beef. How fancy can this be? But the beef was locally grown. It had different tastes from the butcher shop in Athens. It was, I remember this, food is memories. And it brings all this envy. How can you create a dish today in the biggest cities in the world? Okay. Melbourne, for example, or Sydney, biggest cities, lifestyle like no other. Okay. Quality of life, and people going to a restaurant and they fancy a lovely meal. How do we create a delicacy? We need these memories. We need our knowledge and data, important, and we create a dish. This is all about Aegli. Aegli, we want to bring a food culture of a nation since ancient times, because we see data from historians and written down a few things, references, not something in particular, but we get the science of how food was, techniques, preserving pork in its own larder and preserving seafood, how they were curing fish. The fishermen were living coastal side. So they were hanging the fish, and because of the sea breeze and the Mediterranean the Mediterranean Sea, there is a lot of salt because less circulation, more salt in the water. It's not like ocean. So the breeze was curing the fish. And we think, oh, fancy chef techniques. That's been 1,000 years before us. Or preserving things in molasses and sugars, natural sugars. And fancy cakes with semolina or cracked wheat. And there is always a past. There is always roots to what we see today. There is always roots. Nothing just came up today. Nothing. Technology, food, music, something is behind it, and we should be researching. Eating, very entertaining. Researching and eating, very entertaining. Drinking wine, a thing that is very underrated in restaurants. Sommeliers talking about the wine. Do we understand things? Sometimes, because of the terminology, like a chef. Like we say something fancy in a technique and people are looking at us, what's happening? But that's reality. There is a lot of work behind wine. There is a lot of work behind food. A lot of work behind what you do. Research, data, love, passion, dreams. So it's not a single thing that makes a restaurant a restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the beginnings of your career? Tell us about this first sort of 5 years. Like what drew you in and what was it like for you? What did you love about it?
The first year of school, we were living in the school. We were dressed with fancy suits and we were doing 5 days practice and 2 days, so 3 days practice, 2 days theory and practice. It was maybe the greatest school of Greece at the time. I cannot speak about today because I'm not sure. Because it was government funded, we got all the funds, all the power, fancy kitchens in a hotel, coastal area of Attica, Athens. And it wasn't one lobster that our lobster, fancy things, but fancy things very expensive. Yeah, always. So it was today, one lobster, the teacher is cooking, presentation, and like a team of 20, 25 watching. Back then, it was our own lobster that we were cooking. Every single person, a different recipe. So it was an interesting part. First year, then they asked us to go to a hotel and do some apprenticeship jobs on the weekend that we were not living in the school, in the hotel. I didn't like it. Too much politics, hotel stuff, corporate. I said, you know what? After 2-3 times, I said, I give up. This is not what I want. And a guy that he became a friend and he was one of the teachers of the school, he said, Yanni, there is an opportunity. Don't do your apprenticeship jobs, the lowest paid in the world. Let's do a restaurant. I said, okay, let's do a restaurant. So the first summer of apprenticeship, it was in a hotel at Skiathos Island, which is one of the best islands, I think, in Greece. Not the best, one of the best. Then a French restaurant in Koronaki, very fancy area, posh area. A lot of things happening, fancy restaurants, club, everything. So I worked there at this restaurant where I met the head chef, Spiro, and I've seen tactic. I've seen discipline. I've seen one person doing only sauces, like the books. One person was doing only the fish, like the books. And one person was doing only the salads, like the books. It was a proper kitchen. I said, is this real? Is this real or a fairy tale? Like, and then I got the job. I was doing the sauces, which it was magnificent. Big scoop, like sausage with foie gras and well, name it. This restaurant was selling only eye fillet. That's it. Of course, entrees and seafood, but the only meat was eye fillet. That's it. And the guy next to me, who was doing the grill, the char grill, and the pans, he had 15 timers. Every single eye fillet has a timer. So military. No one would cook, no one would talk during service. So I liked it. Back in the days, though, this world was all wild. We hear today, chefs swearing and yell at people. Yeah, that was the era. This is how we got cultivated in a wild culture. We use that as an excuse. We didn't see better. We didn't learn from better. But that was the times. Chefs were locked up behind a wall and swearing each other and yelling each other. And people were getting verbally abused. But that was the explanation is there was a lot of pressure. It's not actually an excuse. People just, they were different. The culture was different. Okay? Nothing toxic about it, was just different. It was a lot of pressure, like pressure from the owners, pressure from the press, pressure from everything, from the sommeliers, from the method of the restaurant. It was a lot of pressure. Today, if you add such pressure to one person, physics, if you add pressure, there will be explosion. That was it. That's human nature. the more we push someone, the more reacts. And sometimes because of the pressure, overreacts. And I'm not saying that to give excuse to people that they are getting upset in a working environment. But there is human nature there. We have to understand.
You had an extraordinary career in Athens before your time in Australia, owning businesses and amazing venues. What was sort of the highlight for you and the biggest lesson you learned in your time in Athens?
Highlight a few of them. We had the capacity to create venues with business partners with limited financial power. I've never had a bank account that I was pulling money and opening business. Never, ever. The highlight, though, today, as we are and we know what we've gone through in Greece, it was the financial crisis. That was the biggest coup. That was a book. That was a book. That was a situation that you had to learn how to behave as a business person or as a professional, which I was too, because I used to own business and then working in restaurants too at the same time. And we didn't know what was GFC. We didn't know these things. We haven't experienced such a thing in Greece up until 2006, because some people outside of the big cities, they have felt financial crisis 2009, maybe 2010. That was the story 2006. And we had to learn how to fight it. We paid about 75, 80,000 euro, which is 150,000 Australian dollars at one of our businesses. It was a club restaurant. We paid this much money only for sound because we thought we were short in sound quality. That was in the central district of Athens, city square. We didn't know. So that was a big lesson. Along with the lesson I've learned to be a better person at the working environment. You might tell me, come on, Yanni, it took you from 1996, when I started working in the kitchen, 1995, 1996, took you 8 years to be better? Yes. Sad. I had to be better because it was only one goal. How can I be a good chef, a better chef? But when you have this kind of desires, this burning desire to be the best, you become a loner. You are alone because you don't care about anyone else. Why should anyone else care about you? It's taking a giving sort of lesson. So I was looking people watching, going out for drinks. I was staying back in the kitchen, testing until 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Sometimes they were coming in the morning. I was there. I was alone. And that was sad. Someone saying, I was 22, my sous chef was 35. He was married. And he said, it's my anniversary. Can I take the one day off? I said, no. Mindless actions just because of the desire. And people hear it, the guy's not good. It's not about character. It's about torturing brains and bodies, and you become selfless. You become something that there is no character. You're just a robot, and you just work.
Tell us about those learnings and how you changed and the impact it had on you when you did change.
Realizing that that's not sustainable. You can't keep going like that. Talking to myself. The thought process changed. And that's why I say today, we become better people when we work with new people. We're hiring someone, we're working with someone new. That makes us better because we know how can we work with a complete stranger and get him to be part of the team, and we become part of this person's team. So having a advanced cultural change for what I used to be, and because I was cooking only for myself. All I cared, it was what can I put on the plate that no one else did because of me. It was all about me. And when I changed and seeing people differently, without me noticing, the food changed. I stopped cooking for me. It wasn't about me. I started cooking for people. And when you start cooking for people, food becomes better. When you start cooking for pleasure and people that they come for you and for what you do, still cooking for people, the food is better, becomes more adventurous for everyone, not for only one person. So you stop being alone. There is no loneliness anymore. So it worked well.
Amazing. I'm interested about how you ended up in Melbourne. How did you choose Australia, and what drove you to come out here?
It was when I thought that there is no future in Greece. There is always future in Greece. There is always future in around the world. Wherever you go, there is an opportunity. This is what and we say something in Greek, where there is land to step on it, that can be home. So I think that I should stop trying for the time being and try my best in a different country. Then it was Australia or Canada. After a bit of research, we had a great relationship with technology. We used to have internet cafes. We had all the information in front of us. We were good with technology. So stable, political and financial stable countries at that time, and still Australia is Australia or Canada. Australia, very, very, very distant siblings from my grandmother. I've never met them. Very nice people, but I didn't know them. So that was my only connection that said Australia probably is. So I arrived in Melbourne. I took off the plane, and my first employer picked me up. I went to work. So yeah, Melbourne is, I realized that is a very, very cultural place, so you can test yourself. Because there is a lot of restaurants. There was an exercise during COVID. Melbourne, Victoria should have an X amount of restaurants to be sustainable business, world, and the economy, but we have 3 times more. That says a lot. You must be very careful to what you do. You must be very exact, very precise how you choose to do business. We always do mistakes, yes. But I think Melbourne is a place that can be the start of a great business. And that's why we've chosen, well, we live here. It's a place that we know. Like, I can't go tomorrow and open up a business in Sydney or in Brisbane, which it's very interesting. So, yeah, I reckon I've made the right decision.
Yeah. Melbourne is famous for its huge Greek community. How do you feel about the Greek community and how food has become a big part of the fabric of restaurants and culture in Melbourne?
The biggest opportunity that we've seen is because Greeks in Melbourne, in particular, it's a big number, first thing, the population. But also over the years, they connected with other cultures, other ethnicities, other different background people, and they draw them into the food. Because food is a gathering place. So, we have guests last night. A lovely Indian lady. She's working on Collins Street. She came and she said, my husband is Greek. I'm going to bring him here. And I said, why are you saying this? Because he doesn't know the restaurant? He said, no, they brought me colleagues. But he always gets me to Greek restaurants. So this is a sample, just a sample, one person. Greeks, we strongly believe that a point of gathering, it's food. It's part of our culture. So Melbourne has a lot of these people, like a lot. We meet a lot of diners, new diners every day. And what is fascinating about Aegli, because Aegli does different, again, not better, different. They see what we do there. They see it. And this is very rewarding. This is very important for us, because without these guests and without our team, how can they see all these things? How can we get this word out? So the great opportunity is being given by our diners. It doesn't matter how much I know. It doesn't matter how quickly our team adapts to what we want to present there. Without our diners.
Both of your restaurants have built an incredible sense of community and connection with the guests. How do you go about that? How does a restaurant create that?
There are different aspects of a business. Financials, product services, suppliers, teams. There are different aspects. Everything about money, just before we open the door, we should forget about it. They can't be together. They can't coexist. And seeing it, since I started growing up in business in Athens, I was hearing people, they say, but the bills, and then I realized that the more you think about the bills and everything that the business has to pay, you have to understand that these two things, they can't coexist. You can't serve your guests and at the same time you're thinking that you have to pay wages on Monday, for example. Because you act differently. There is an aura. You don't see it because you are under pressure, but your guests can feel it, can sense it. Your guests have they have sensors. Like the fancy cars, they have all sensors, doors, windows and stuff. The computers, different temperatures and stuff. Our guests having these kind of sensors, they can sense tension. They can sense financial hardship. They can sense the will of upselling things for the sake of the bill. They can sense these things. And in Australia, the customer world is very aware of this. And we cannot present such a behavior. We cannot let it go out. We're going back, we do the numbers, we do the costing. Do we have to change the price on the menu? We'll change the price on the menu. That's a world. That's always been the situation with the pricing. But you have to do the numbers before you enter the dining room or before you enter the kitchen. Do the numbers, be confident, and that's it. You never think about numbers. When you stop thinking about numbers, a restaurant becomes home, temple, something sacred, people going there to please themselves, entertain themselves. We did entertainment in Athens, dances in a club and lovely things that we haven't even seen in a few countries around the world. Okay? But entertainment was entertainment. It doesn't matter what happened, what was happening outside of the door. No one cared because everything was focused. So we are focused on service. We are focused on philoxenia, this hospitality that you make a stranger to feel loved by people that they haven't ever met. Who knows about me? No one knows me. But how do we make them feel special?
You mentioned that your food is different, not necessarily better in a Greek sense. I wondered if you could tell us about a dish or two that sort of exemplifies your approach.
When we start doing this back in Athens in 2000, early 2000, 1999, restaurants and stuff, back then trying to be better and all the best, that was a drive. We start thinking outside of the box. Thinking inside the box, we think someone created a dish, the cabbage roll with meat and rice, and then lightly cooked, not lightly cooked, cooked in a pot, all stuck together, lovely dish. How do we think outside of the box? Then we start thinking, what is the story behind a dish in Greece? There is a culture that in the mainland of Greece is meat-driven dishes, and then in the islands, seafood driven dishes, heavily seafood-based dishes, because they didn't have access to pork or beef, not until the modern world. So how can we talk? How can we have a story to tell to our guests about the island cooking and about the mainland cooking? So what we do, we get a dish, because this is how they used to cook. When we were cooking pork in the pot with preserved tomatoes and pine nuts and stuff and some mushrooms, they were cooking similar dish but with fish in the islands. And that hasn't been presented. Not even in many restaurants in Greece. Very few, even today. So it was to tell this story. So what we do, we got these lacanodormates, the cabbage rolls with meat and rice, and then we recreate the dish based on the story of the fisherman cooking something on boat, going back with the fish. All the little fishes that they couldn't sell, no one would buy a fish like this. Yeah. So seawater, a few potatoes, olive oil, these fishes. That was a fish soup, kakavia. How about we get this seawater sarospa, the fish soup, and we do the lacanodolmades, the cabbage rolls, but without the meat mince. We mince some scallops and prawns and rice, and we wrap it, and we cook it in this soup. A process that is tiring to hear. But it is a story behind the dish. We don't always have the time to talk to our guests. We should talk by cooking. We should say a story by cooking and presenting and give them to try. How can Greek, very, very deeply cultural cuisine can be in the dining scene, in the restaurant world, and being placed in the list that, like, if we ever meet, we're gonna think, are we going to French or Italian? Or we're gonna go a fancy steakhouse? But there is no Greek in the fancy dining. Shouldn't we put this food in the fancy dining era, in the fancy dining world? Or let's delete the word. Let me rephrase. In the quality dining restaurant choice. This is the difference. The history behind the dish, and then where we place this cultural cuisine, which is very rich, made by poor people.
Well, it's amazing what you're doing there in Melbourne. What do you love about what you do?
I think where I find, at the same time, I find peace, pleasure, and drive is when I see our diners pleased, our diners impressed by what we do. And again, I'm going to say it again and again, Aegli is no better than others, than other restaurants. We don't compare. Comparison and competition is disappointing. Because you're not the best. You're never going to be the best. Your restaurant is not the best, never going to be the best. So we stay on our own league, on our own lane. We do things the way we want to do that for the reasons that we have. And we never compare ourselves with others. Because comparing people and restaurants and businesses and food, it's part of it's human nature. But human nature is never perfect. We always do mistake. So the only mistake we'll ever do in our restaurants, in whatever we do in the future and today, is to compare ourselves with others. We are not better. We're not better. We're just different. And we have our own way of thinking. So the thought process, the way we execute things, the way we have the data, how we develop. The new restaurants coming up, it's going to be built on our own repertoire of 300 recipes, 400 recipes. This is how we feel comfortable to open up another Greek restaurant with all different recipes. So more cuisine by us, more Greek cuisine by us, more creativity, and that gives the pressure at Aegli to become way more creative, because the new one is going to be creative too. So yeah, we can't drop the ball in one and then developing on the other.
Well, it's very exciting to see the developments that are unfolding, and also to get you on the show. I can't wait to see where you go from here. So please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.